This episode of CppCast is sponsored by JetBrains, maker of intelligent development tools to simplify your challenging tasks and automate the routine ones. JetBrains is offering a 25% discount for an individual license on the C++ tool of your choice, CLion, ReSharper C++, or AppCode. Use the coupon code JetBrains for CppCast during checkout at jetbrains.com. Episode 125 of CppCast recorded October 29th, 2017. In this episode, we talk about C++ package managers. Then I check in with Jason on his travels in New Zealand. Jason shares some highlights from the first ever Pacific++ conference. Welcome to episode 125 of CppCast, the only podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, how you doing today?
Pretty good. It's a bit early for me at the moment.
Yeah, you want to tell listeners where you are right now?
I am currently in New Zealand since we had just wrapped up Pacific++ a couple of days ago.
Awesome. And you are going to be soon leaving for Germany, right?
Yes, next on my way to meeting C++, and I'll be giving 2 talks there, which is kind of interesting actually, because the airline that I'm using to get into and out of Berlin is Air Berlin, which ceased operations fully 2 days ago.
Wow. So 3 days before your flight, or 2 days before your flight, you were told that your airline is no longer in existence?
Well, it's not quite that bad. I still have a few days before I get to Berlin. But yes, effectively. So I had to quickly rebook new flights leaving Berlin, and I'm still sorting out how I'm actually getting to Berlin.
Oh, wow.
And they're non-refundable because they were purchased before the insolvency period began due to something about German law.
Oh, you can't get a refund from Air Berlin?
That's what their website's telling me and what their email's telling me.
Wow, that is horrible. That doesn't seem legal for them to not be able to refund you. That's crazy.
It's a bankruptcy proceedings. You know, their assets are held in some sort of thing until things get resolved and whatever. I can file a claim to someday get refunded if there happens to be enough money left over after the bankruptcy proceedings are done.
Jeez, well, good luck with that. And good luck getting into Germany for meeting C++.
It shouldn't be that hard. There are many, many flights into Germany. I just have to figure out a couple of steps still.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to talk a little bit more about how the Pacific++ conference went and, do our normal news. We don't have a guest this week, but I think it should be a good plan, right, Jason?
Yeah, our listeners seem to like it when we just do news-only episodes sometimes, so yeah, let's give it a shot.
Okay, well, before we get to that, at the top of every episode, I'd like to read a piece of feedback, and this one, we got a really long email, but I really appreciate these emails. This one comes from Lori Hedge, and she wrote in, I finally finished catching up with all the back episodes of the podcast, and I just want to say thanks for putting together such an excellent resource for C++ programmers. With the pace of change picking up in the world of C++, it really is invaluable to have something like your podcast to help keep the busy programmer up to speed with what's going on in the wider community. You always ask for guest suggestions, and as I've been listening, there are a few that spring to mind that I don't think you've had yet. I don't know any of these people personally, so I'm afraid I can't put you in touch, but they are people I follow and find interesting, and would love to hear more from them on the podcast. And Lori sent us a whole bunch of different guest suggestions. Some of these I'm familiar with, like John Cormack from Oculus, Stephanie Hulbert of Binomial, but there's a whole bunch that I'm not familiar with either. PJ Ploger, who's one of the library implementers for Dinkumware, who would certainly be an interesting guest. Abner Combra of NASA, Tim Sweeney, Epic Games, Lee Bamber or Paul Johnson of TGC, which is the game creators.
I definitely don't know them. I do know who Tim Sweeney is. Follow him on Twitter, I believe.
Yeah. Well, a whole bunch of really good guest suggestions, and I'm certainly going to try to reach out to some of these, and hopefully we can get them onto the schedule and talk to some of them. And
So,
thank you.
we tried to get Carmack on, right?
I think we did. And
Yeah.
I think at the time that we reached out to him or through his PR, it was like right around the big games conference.
E3 or something?
Yeah,
or...
E3. Although we are going to have someone else from Oculus on the show soon. Not John
Is
Carmack,
that
but
right?
someone else. Yes. Whose name I can't remember right now, but I believe it's someone who works on the Oculus SDK.
Should be good.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
You know,
Okay.
on the topic of this listener having gone through and just caught up on all the back episodes, it makes me
Yeah.
wonder when she found out about the show. Like last week and then listened to 125 episodes in like a day.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I do wonder how, listeners kind of stumble upon the podcast and decide to listen to the back catalog. I'm curious what we could do to find more listeners like that who want to listen to all the older episodes and get caught up to speed.
Well, maybe we should do at some point, like a long-time listener, first-time caller kind of episode 2 or something.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
I did recently have someone ask me, like, well, they were just overwhelmed with how many episodes we have, and they were wondering what episode they should start with.
Yeah.
And I ended up suggesting Jonathan Mueller's episode just because it has a surprise ending.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I don't know.
Wait, what do you mean by a surprise ending with that one?
Well, isn't that the one where we, learned something surprising about him?
Yes, okay.
At the end of the episode?
Yeah, that
Okay.
he was still in high school at the time.
Oh, see, now you just gave it away for listeners who haven't heard that episode yet.
My apologies. I don't remember that being at the end of the episode. I thought that was kind of around his bio that we realized that. But I could be wrong.
Oh, maybe you're right.
Yeah.
To be fair, I haven't gone back and listened to it myself.
Well, neither have I. Okay, well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show as well. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. Speaking of Pacific Plus Plus, I saw that on Twitter, since they did just wrap up the conference, they were looking for suggestions on where the next Pacific Plus Plus conference should be held. And the ideas are either Christchurch, Auckland, or Sydney. And there's
Yes.
a tweet where you can go vote your opinion on this. And where was it held this year, Jason?
It was held in Christchurch.
Okay, and that's what is Christchurch like? I mean, would you rather be at a place like Sydney?
I've never been to Sydney,
Right.
and I've never been to Auckland. Of the three at this point, I've only ever been to Christchurch. And
Sure.
it is a pleasant small city.
Mm-hmm.
Has everything you need and an airport that is international. And it seemed like a decent number of people who came partially because they're from, Christchurch or from smaller cities, and it was easy for them to access.
Right.
So I'd be afraid that if it moved to Sydney, maybe they wouldn't get the same group of people, I guess I should say. I don't really know, of course.
I mean, there might be a larger group of people in Sydney who would be able to attend then, though, if it was
Yeah,
there.
that's almost certainly true. It's a much bigger city, and there was a fair number of people actually from Sydney, from Wargaming, was one of the sponsors of the conference, who came to Christchurch.
Okay.
But from what I've learned around here, and I'm still, I'm not entirely sure, but it seems that all of these cities have easy hops between them. Like you can get a direct hop from Christchurch to Sydney or whatever for not terribly expensive, because I don't know, it just seems like there's inexpensive airlines easy to hop around between these areas.
Right. Do you think you might be going again next year, though, Jason?
Well, I mean, if I have the opportunity to,
Right.
may as well.
Okay, next article, and this kind of ties into what we were talking about with the last episode with Izzy. Does C++ need a universal package manager? And this is an article on Paul Foltz's blog, who was one of the first guests we ever had on the show. And
Long
he's
time ago.
talking, yeah, a long time ago. And he's talking about the different package managers and how maybe we might not ever get a single universal package manager that the entire community uses, but maybe we could try to standardize some parts of what it means to be a package manager, like a common configuration file that a library could expose that different package managers would be set up to ingest, which definitely sounds like a good idea. I don't know what it would take to have all of the different disparate package managers go and make these changes to support it.
Yeah. I don't know. I was reading the article kind of thinking that too. Like, it seems like that would be almost as hard as getting everyone on board with a universal package manager.
Yeah.
But then I didn't realize that Paul was author of his own package manager, cget.
No, I was not aware of that one either. And actually, there's a whole bunch on here that I have maybe heard of, but don't know much about. I mean, obviously, there's Conan, who we had on the show, and that kind of derived from B Code. Had a bunch of the same people working on it. But then there's also Buckaroo, CGET, which I think was Paul Foltz's.
Right.
Conda, CPM, CppAn, and Hunter. And I don't have much familiarity with most of those.
No, the only other two that I've heard of, Buckaroo, because someone from that project, I believe, recently submitted a patch to ChaiScript.
Is that the Facebook one?
I don't even know. I just accepted the patch.
Okay.
And Hunter, which I think is a direct CMake add-in, so it just uses CMake to do its work. I think that's right.
One thought I had while reading this article was, obviously it's not the place of the standards committee to be standardizing a certain build system or a certain package manager. That's definitely like out of the scope of what goes on at the ISO committee. But I almost wonder if maybe it would make sense to have like a working group just to have somewhere associated with the standards body where people could talk about these things and maybe make suggestions, like a common package manager definition.
So just like in a hypothetical situation, if a large proposed change to the standards, like modules, were to somehow affect the ability for a package manager to work well, that's something that could be discussed in this working group?
Yeah. Kind of makes sense, right?
Perhaps. I mean, I don't claim to like really understand how the inner workings of the committee work, but it does not sound like an unreasonable suggestion.
No, it doesn't. Maybe someone else who's a part of the standards committee could chime in on this after they listen to the episode and let us know if that's a bad idea or maybe a half decent idea. I don't know.
I'm quite certain it's a bad idea, and we just don't understand why.
That's quite possible. Okay, this next one is Petra, and this is a library put together by Jackie Kay, who we had on the show a while ago. And the library actually, I think she announced a couple months ago, but I just noticed her tweeting about it a couple days ago and thought we'd mention it. And this is a C++ 17 metaprogramming library for transforming runtime values to compile time values and types. I was wondering what your thoughts were on this one, Jason.
I looked at this last night, and I thought actually, this was my train of thought. My train of thought was, I wonder if Jackie's going to be presenting at Meeting C++. Then I can just go watch her talk on it. So then I looked at the Meeting C++ conference schedule, and sure enough, she is going to be talking about it.
Oh, okay.
However, it's on the third day of the conference, which I'm no longer able to attend since I had to change my flights.
That's unfortunate.
Yes. So that was, at that point, I was just sad. Yeah. And I didn't go back and dig into the actual details of the library, which I probably should have. But it does make sense. So for our listeners, it builds a compile time table of possible values, and then you can do a lookup of a value into the compile time table when you need to. Or, yes, right.
And
So
some of
that
the
is not
benefits
tested
of that would
efficient.
be, you could use const expr functions on an input variable, that type of thing.
Oh, see, that's where it starts to get a little fuzzy for me.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, if you can, so it says, let's clear it, runtime values to compile time values. So you still, like, if you have something that's runtime, then it's just runtime. There's no way to assign that to a const expr thing, right?
Right.
But if you have a table that you generated at compile time or something, and then you want to ask, I don't know. I don't know. I need to spend more time looking at it. I need to go to Jackie's talk. But at the very least, all those will be up on YouTube at some point.
Yeah, Meeting C++ just we'll put all their videos up pretty quickly, just like CppCon does, right?
Yes. Oh, and on that topic, Pacific++ already announced that, like, on Monday they expect the videos to be going up.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so, well, I guess Monday, perhaps in New Zealand time, which will be Sunday. Wait, what day is it? It's Sunday there right now, right?
Today is Sunday for me, yes.
Yeah, so it's weird time traveling kind of thing going on here.
Yeah,
So it's entirely possible those videos will start going up today.
I'm checking
But
right
anyhow,
now. Pacific++ is kind of a hard thing to search for, though.
yes.
I'm seeing a bunch of videos about Pacific wars. I don't know.
Well, there's
I'll,
nothing
I'll take a look later.
tweeted about it yet on the
Okay.
official Twitter page. Although I did just notice that he made me the backdrop for the official Twitter page, which is kind of
That's
weird.
kind of cool.
No, I need to spend more time looking at this library from Jackie for sure.
Yeah. Well, and apparently she'll have a talk that we can all watch to learn more about it too.
Yes.
Okay. Next one is Bjarne Stroustrup was interviewed at CppCon 2017, and this was an interview from the Going Native channel from Microsoft, so it's up on Channel 9. And they always do a really good job with these interviews. We sat down for one last year. Did you sit down for another one this year, Jason?
I did not. I was pretty busy at the conference, so I didn't sign up for
Sure.
that.
Okay, well, this one is Bjarne and Gabidos Reis talking with the interviewer whose name I can't remember. Oh, Steve Carroll.
Right.
And mostly talking about Bjarne's keynote, and which was really interesting to watch, and talking a lot about teaching C++ and what we can all do to help teach C++ and bring it to new programmers. Did you have a chance to watch the video?
I didn't, given my current
Okay.
internet situation. But for our listeners who weren't aware, or maybe even CppCon attendees who weren't paying attention, there was an overall theme of teaching C++ at this year's conference.
Yeah.
Several of the keynotes were around that subject.
And I know with Bjarne's, at least, part of it was how to make, the introduction experience to C++ easier. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with build systems and package managers, that if we did have, universal build system or universal package manager, that would certainly be easier to get someone going if we could just point them to, go use this to get started.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. That is like Python and Ruby. It's just like crazy, stupid, easy to start
Yeah.
including a bunch of other packages.
Yeah, definitely.
But, and then we have that issue that happened with JavaScript, right? I believe we've talked about it on the show before, where some like 3-line library in
Oh, yeah.
in NPM went away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that caused like the entire world to explode.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wonder if there's just this underlying aversion in the C++ community, because we're like, no, we're C++. We control our projects. We don't want everything to come toppling down like a house of cards because someone's 3-line header-only string
Right.
library decided to go away.
Well, I think if you're in a large organization, you maybe don't think about these things as much because your build system and whatever you do for package management has been, running for years and years, and you don't really care that much to change anything. And if you're a new developer to that company, you just need to learn how your company does things.
Right.
But if you're starting fresh or you're, an open source developer making a library, then, these things are a big concern and they can be hard to deal with.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's just undeniable how much of a help and how much easier it makes it to get started than in Python and Ruby and Perl and whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Next article, is an interview that Herb Sutter did with InfoQ, which is a website I'm not really too familiar with, but the interview was really good. It was on C++ 17. The ISO committee has just formally approved the new standard, and kind of getting some of Herb's thoughts on it, what some of the big features were in his eyes, and also what some of the major focus areas will be on C++ 20.
Right.
Yeah. And it was a really good interview. He apparently did the interview over email, so he was able to write really thoughtful and long answers, which is nice. Of course, Herb always gives really thoughtful, long answers to everything, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's yeah, some interesting little bits in here, I think. Like asking him if he has any more books planned.
Yeah, he had an interesting answer to that, how he was writing books back when he was kind of still learning some things himself, and now that he's, kind of guiding the C++ community as the convener, he doesn't really have much to write about learning C++. He's kind of focused on what he can do within the standards committee to make C++ better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's true for most of us who have blogged or created material. Like you learn something interesting, so therefore you
You want
decide to share that with, yeah.
Yeah, and for listeners who don't or have never written a blog, that's, it really is a powerful resource to be able to write down something you just learned, because you'll learn it, 10 times better by
Oh
writing it
yeah.
down and maybe getting feedback from it from other people in the community. It's definitely a good thing to do if you've never done it before.
And just the process, the thought process of how do I explain this to someone else? And now
Yeah.
the topic is 3 times bigger than you thought it was.
Right. Trying to think, was there anything else really interesting that we wanted to bring up from this interview with Herb?
Well, they do ask him if he gets any inspiration or finds interest in other upcoming languages like Rust, Swift, and Go. And
Yeah.
he does, yeah.
Yeah, and he had another really good answer for that. I mean, he said, obviously, we do. And he had one interesting point about how Swift is a great example of, seeing something change in a language, because Swift is more or less replacing Objective-C. And how well, Apple's able to do that because they kind of own both platforms completely.
Have you
Uh,
programmed in Objective-C or Swift?
I have not programmed in Swift. I have programmed in Objective-C. It's kind of a nightmare.
Yes, I've programmed in Objective-C briefly, and I just despised it. I think
Yeah.
I understand what they were going for back when it was created, but I was wondering, yeah, if you could compare it to Swift, but since neither one of us can compare it to Swift, that's not terribly helpful, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
and
have to check out Swift at some point.
the one thing I know is Objective-C, the one nice thing about it is how well it interops with C++. Although there are definitely, some pitfalls you can run into. And I'm not sure if Swift does at all. Like, I think Swift will interop with Objective-C, so you can kind of use all three if your goal is to use some C++ with your, iOS app, but you want to be able to write Swift too. I think you'd wind up using all three, but that's kind of a mess.
I had this brief conversation at Pacific Plus Plus with, well, there was a meet the speakers dinner, so we kind of got grilled a bit. But it was, I still think even in this day and age, for a language to be really successful, at least for a systems language, a compiled language to be really successful, it has to have some way of interacting with a C ABI.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
For a language to be successful, a compiled language to be successful, it has to have some way of interacting with a C ABI.
Yeah.
I mean, like Java even has ways of interacting with C, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I assume Swift has some way of interacting with C functions, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'd have to look into that. about what they do for C interrupt if they do anything. I'm still
It's
curious about.
officially on my to-do list now.
I'm curious about Kotlin too, which I know we've talked about before when Kotlin was first announced. I'm still not sure if they do any C or C++ interrupt.
The Kotlin compiles to the JVM, right?
Right. So Kotlin's kind of like a Java replacement, the way Swift is a Objective-C replacement.
Right. So
Yeah.
at least through the what's the Java C API thing?
JNI.
JNI. There you go. Yeah. At least through JNI, I would imagine you could with Kotlin.
Maybe. Okay, and then the last thing to announce is it looks like all of the CppCon 2017 videos are now on YouTube. The playlist for the talks, it looks like it's 126 talks, and then I think 55 lightning talks in addition to that. So it's a lot of content to watch. I'm definitely still trying to catch up. I just watched Izzy's talk the other day, and but they're all up there. So you got plenty to watch until CppCon next year.
I have so many that I have to watch when I get back to having, normal regular internet access again.
Yeah.
You all are able to at least start going on these things, but it'll be until after meeting C++20 before I'll really have the time to sit down and watch them. Have you tried, Rob, to watch all of the videos from a conference before?
No, I don't think I've ever tried to watch everything.
At least 130 hours of videos or whatever from this one?
Yeah, I mean, that's just a lot of content. I mean, I always make sure I watch like all the keynotes and then I'll kind of pick and choose, but yeah, never watched them all.
Yeah, that's, I bring this up because I have met a couple of people who, for whatever reason, haven't been able to attend one of the bigger conferences, who have said that they made a point of watching every single video from a particular year. Like one person said he was sick lying on the sofa and he just watched them all straight. Like, I can't imagine.
The one thing I would consider is maybe if you tried to listen to the videos the way you would watch a podcast where, certain podcast players will let you watch something at like 1.5 or 2x speed, and I think YouTube lets you do it too.
Yeah.
But if you want to actually like pay attention to the slides and code snippets, you can't be watching it at double speed.
No, I wouldn't think so. At least depending on the speaker.
Yeah.
I know some speakers, they have a very good pace of putting something up, letting you digest it, and then moving on. You could probably watch them a little bit faster. You just wouldn't get the digestion time.
Right.
But some of us, sometimes me, has, 2 or 3 slides per minute going up. And that could be, I think, harder to follow, depending on what you're doing.
Right.
Or you have other talks that I've given where I gave a 90-minute talk in 60 minutes, and that one I really don't recommend watching at fast.
Yeah, it'd be hard to do.
Yeah, that was just a mistake.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's all the news articles we got, Jason. Do you want to talk some more about your experience at Pacific++?
No, sure. It was a great conference. There was 10 speakers, 10 talks, about 66 people, I think, came. 2-day conference, just a single track, if there's 10 speakers in 2 days.
Sure.
It wouldn't make sense to have more than 2 tracks. There's a keynote each morning. Chandler's talk, which was the very opening talk of the conference, it was a great way to start the conference, was, because Chandler has good energy when he's speaking. He gave an overview of all of the tools that are in the Clang and LLVM project that relate to C++.
Okay.
And I would have thought that what he did was effectively impossible. And it's not even, so I would have thought that giving an overview of these tools in an hour would have been pushing it. But he took it to the next level where he checked out and compiled the tools, and then gave a live demo overview of using each of them within an hour. Now, I mean, in a sense, he cheated just a little bit because he was using his server back at home, which can compile LLVM and Clang in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Most of us don't have access to 32 or 64 cores or whatever it was
Sure.
that he was
Yeah.
building on. But yes, he makes it all seem very approachable, and we're well done.
Yeah, it sounds like a great talk.
Yeah. That one, I think everyone should be looking forward to coming up.
And aside from you and Chandler, were all the other talks from, locals from the New Zealand, Australian area?
I believe every other speaker either is from New Zealand. I think every other speaker is currently living in New Zealand or Australia. I mean, not
Okay.
all of them are natives, right?
Sure.
Or some definition of native, I guess. But yes. So I was just in general surprised to learn how many Brits are living in New Zealand. But that's
Hmm.
relatively easy for them with their British Commonwealth relationship. But
Yeah.
yeah. So there's that, and then let's see. Yes, I guess that's the answer to that question.
Any particular highlights from some of the other speakers? I'm taking a look at
So we
the list of the schedule right now.
So Dean Barris, whom I had never met before, is also works at Google and has helped develop this project called X-Ray, which is used for debugging
Okay.
projects, doing call tracing and that kind of thing. His talk was entertaining. He was entertaining, and it was a well done talk. I mean, there was 10, only 10 talks, so
Right.
they definitely all had something to add. But that was Dean. I had never met before. That was a good talk. And I learned, it was an interesting overview of the differences in how compilers handle different warning levels from Tom Isaacson, which was the very last talk of the conference.
Okay.
And I guess I'll mention one other one. It's not to say that the others aren't worth mentioning, but just for the sake of not going through every single one. Sarah Smith gave this talk, Postcards from the Cross-Platform Frontier. And in a way, it was the most daring talk I think I've ever seen someone give.
Okay.
She live coded a Twitter feed reader in Qt Creator,
Okay.
and then demoed it running on her Mac, and then plugged in her iPhone and demoed it running on her iPhone.
Oh, wow.
When it was almost that easy. I mean, it was done in an hour. And, you and I have both programmed in Objective-C.
Yeah.
Do you think you could have written that in Objective-C and had it running on your iPhone?
No. It's definitely not something I would want to try.
The fact that she used Qt was a huge help, and she
Yeah.
had some of the Twitter backend stuff. Actually, no. I think she was actually getting it straight from the what do you call it, RESTful API from Twitter.
Oh, okay.
I was to see it running in an hour, and to think about how much effort I've gone through trying to wrangle Objective-C on the iPhone and trying to wrangle Java on Android, and to think that, yes, in this day and age, I could have just written one app for one platform and then run it on Android and iOS from Qt Creator would be just a huge help for me, and be able to stick with the language I already know.
Yeah. I really like the description of her talk because it's something I think about all the time, how we always hear about multi-platform technologies like React, Cordova, and Unity, and those names always seem to be changing, whatever the newest, cross-platform JavaScript framework is.
Right.
But C++ has always been there. It's just not necessarily thought about as much when you talk about writing an iPhone or Android app, doing it in C++.
Well, I certainly suggest you consider it next time you need to do a cross-platform app. I know I will.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to watch her talk. It sounds like a fun one.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, like we said, you're going to be going to Germany next to speak at Meeting C++. Hopefully you're able to get all your travel sorted out, Jason.
Thanks. Hopefully, yes.
Yeah. And do you think we might be able to touch base from Germany too?
Well, my stay in Germany is becoming more abbreviated because of the
Right.
flight issue, but we will see if we can. It is certainly easier to work out Central European time compared to, I don't even know what this time zone is actually called.
New Zealand time, whatever it's called.
Yeah, it's New Zealand time, but I'm sure it's shared with a couple of other countries.
Sure.
Aren't it
Sure.
here? I feel like it must be.
Yeah.
Fiji. You know, I don't know. I'm going to have to look that up now. But yes, New Zealand time. And we are now, it's technically, so since this is the beginning of fall, no, this is the beginning of spring, right? They just spring ahead here. So they're off compared to the rest of the world until until the northern hemisphere, until the northern hemisphere falls back in a couple of days, I believe, is the time.
Right.
Actually, was the time today for you?
I don't know. Definitely wasn't today. I don't know when it is, but it must be soon.
I think Europe just changed today, actually, so it must be next week that the U.S. changes. I don't know. I'll have to look into that, too. It just keeps everything interesting.
It's November 5th, so it's in 6 days for us.
Okay.
Right around the time this episode's going to air, actually.
Very good.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's been great talking to you, Jason. I'm glad we were able to do this, and hopefully we'll be able to work something out while you're in Germany, okay?
All right. Thanks, Rob. And
Yeah.
thanks for keeping the show going while I'm on the road.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you to everyone for listening. Thanks so much for listening in as we chat about C++. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. Please let me know if we're discussing the stuff you're interested in. Or if you have a suggestion for a topic, I'd love to hear about that too. You can email all your thoughts to feedback@cppcast.com. I'd also appreciate if you like CppCast on Facebook and follow CppCast on Twitter. You can also follow me at Rob W. Irving and Jason at LeftKiss on Twitter. And of course, you can find all that info and the show notes on the podcast website at CppCast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com. Website at CppCast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com.